In this brief demonstration, we're going to discover how to use the FrameMaker Return on Investment Calculator. You may want to freeze the video at this point and actually write down the URL that I have in front of you because there's no way to copy it from the video. As you can see, it's just a shortened Adobe bit.ly URL, and you simply have to get these final characters. I'm going to make a copy of them. I'm going into a browser. In this case, it happens to be Chrome. And I'm going to go to the calculator. The first time you go to the calculator, you have to use your Adobe credentials from your Adobe.com account to log in. So I'm going to go ahead and use mine. There we go. I've logged in before, so it's remembering my password. And moments later, I'll actually be in the calculator itself. So here's thanking me for joining the calculator. You'll notice that there's some brief instructions here where it's actually telling me that this calculator has come pre-populated with some default values. Now what this calculator does is it gives a pretty typical set of values. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. Pretty typical set of values for working with a FrameMaker solution and comparing it to other solutions like XMetal, Oxygen, or perhaps other editors that require quite a bit of development, especially with these style sheets. So in this particular case, we have a fixed value for somebody either upgrading from FrameMaker or buying FrameMaker license. So the first thing we do is we put down how many FrameMaker licenses we have. I'm going to say that we have 20. Then how many new employees do we have that need the license? I'm going to put down 5. How much do we expect to pay somebody to do our EDD development per hour? A typical cost might be around $150 per hour. And then what is our cost per day for training each student? We have that set at about $300. This is pretty typical for USA markets. Then what would be the estimated number of days for user training? Typically for existing FrameMaker users, it would be 1 day of training. And if you had somebody who'd never seen FrameMaker before, it would be 4 days of training. Finally, we're being fairly conservative here by putting in 48 hours for how many hours to develop what's called the element definition document or object template that drives the solution. Now we're going to compare this to the alternative XML editor solution. So what is the cost of the XML editor? Typically it could be less expensive, could be $9.99. How many hours do we expect to develop the CSS and XSLT template development? This is usually a minimum of about 48 hours. How many hours do we expect to develop XSL-FO development per output type? And this would be specifically for PDF output. This is one of those hidden costs. People sometimes don't realize that it can be up to 400 hours to develop the style sheets to do the PDF. Once again, we're looking at about the same cost for students, about $300 per student. And then how many additional hours might be required per language for output type for specific language that would not exist with FrameMaker. Finally, what would be the cost of the PDF publishing engine? And the specific point here is that this is actually built into FrameMaker at no cost, but it very typically costs around $5,000 with many competitive products. Finally, how much do you expect to pay per hour for your CSS XSLT development consultant? Now, this would not be an issue with FrameMaker because your own staff would be able to do this. And how much would you pay the person who's going to develop XSLT-FO development in order to achieve this? Finally, some general project questions. Would a fully loaded author, what would the cost be per year? Here we're looking at about $70,000. Content creation cost per page conversion to XML, not using FrameMaker 11. This would be about -5. Cost page conversion to XML using FrameMaker 11, 1. Unstructured documents to XML to convert. We're assuming that we've got about 30,000 pages. This is pretty typical. Language translation. You put in the number of languages that you have to work with. I'm going to change this from 20 to a little bit less, 18. And what's the number of words per language per year to be translated? And here we're looking at 200,000. Finally, what's the cost of translation per word? It's often somewhere around 13 cents, but you can lower this to your own custom amount. Finally, beyond that, we have the number of we have the form for formatting, we have the number of authors, and the estimated percentage of time spent formatting documents. So anyway, with all the authors that you have working, how much time are they going to spend formatting? And it's typically about 30%. Publishing, what's the number of output formats? You know, paper, PDF, HTML, etc. We're going to say 4. And then reuse. What's the percentage of content that can be reused? Let's change this to 30%. Let's be a little bit more optimistic. And finally, we're going to click compare return on investment. Now, when we do this, we can actually scroll up to the top, and this has actually created an interesting chart for us. First of all, up here on the left-hand side, it's FrameMaker versus the alternate XML editor cost. And what you're looking at here for a very large, ambitious project, with 30,000, whatever we said, huge number of pages, all these different languages, we're looking at a total cost of ownership for FrameMaker of about $62,175. A typical competitive XML editor where you have to pay extra costs to develop all of those style sheets, you're looking at about $351,000. Then the other thing is the payback period, and this is also equally interesting. This shows that from our own metrics from testing, because we frequently have gone in after people have used competitive solutions, that the FrameMaker 11 payback in months is actually about 0.63, whereas other XML editors, it may take up to 3.5 months to pay back. So as you can see, the savings are really quite dramatic. So in summary, the purpose of this is for you to enter your own metrics on how many people you have, what the cost of the software is that you have, what would be the cost of your consultants, and if you compare this with the metrics that we have in here, this will let you know. Finally, when you're finished, you can actually print the summary. This concludes our brief demonstration, and I'd just like to one more time show you that URL that you would use to go to the calculator. This concludes our brief demonstration.